After a major operation, I spent a long time in the hospital. My daughter, my only relative, came every day, but not to bring oranges. She took everything of any value from my apartment, certain I wouldn't return. But I knew what to do. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. The first thing I remember from that time is the beige. Not a warm, buttery beige, but the flat, lifeless color of institutional broth. The walls were beige. The linoleum floor was a swirling pattern of slightly darker beige. And even the light filtering through the blinds seemed tired and beige. For 3 weeks, this beige box was my entire world. It's funny, the things you notice when you have nothing to do but lie there and let your body knit itself back together. My surgery, a triple bypass, had been what the doctors called a resounding success. I found that phrase morbidly amusing. It sounded like something you'd say about a Broadway show, not an operation where they stop your heart and saw your chest open. But I was alive, and for that, I was grateful. At 67, you don't take survival for granted. My daughter, Jessica, was my rock, or so I thought. At 42, she was my only child, the product of a late-in-life love with my darling husband Frank, who I'd lost to cancer nearly a decade ago. Jessica was beautiful, with Frank's dark curly hair and my green eyes. She'd always been a little untethered. A series of jobs that never quite panned out, a couple of failed relationships she swore weren't her fault. I'd always been her safety net. The one she called when her car broke down or rent was due. I never minded. What are mothers for? When I first woke up in the ICU, foggy and tethered to a dozen beeping machines, her face was the first one I saw. Her eyes were red-rimmed and brimming with tears. She clutched my hand, her cool fingers a welcome anchor in the sea of medication-fueled confusion. "Oh, Mom," she whispered, her voice choked with emotion. "You scared me half to death. I thought I was going to lose you." In that moment, my heart, the very organ that had betrayed me, swelled with so much love for her it physically ached. I squeezed her hand back as best I could. As rasped, the breathing tube having left my throat feeling like sandpaper. Always my dramatic girl. For the first week, her devotion was relentless. She was there every morning when I woke up, and the last person I saw before drifting off into a restless, painkiller-laced sleep. She brought gossip magazines, read me articles from the local paper, and updated me on her cat's latest antics. We were closer than we had been in years. The crisis, it seemed, had mended the little frays in our relationship that had developed over time. The shift was so subtle, I barely noticed it at first. It started with a question, dropped casually as she was fluffing my pillows. "Hey, Mom, I was tidying up the house a bit for you, for when you get back. I couldn't remember. Where did you put the key for the little mahogany writing desk?" I was still a bit foggy. "Desk? Oh, in the ceramic sugar bowl in the pantry. The one shaped like a chicken." I didn't think twice about it. Frank had bought me that desk for our 10th anniversary. It was where I kept our old letters, some of his military medals, and the deed to the house. Sentimental things. A few days later, another question. Dad's old watch collection? I was just thinking we should probably get that appraised for the insurance. Where did you stash that away? "In the false bottom drawer of his sock chest, behind the cedar lining, honey." Again, I answered without a flicker of suspicion. It made sense. She was being responsible, thinking of the future. The visits continued, but their texture began to change. They felt less like a daughter sitting with a recovering mother and more like an interview. She'd arrived with a cheerful smile, but her eyes were always scanning, calculating. She started bringing documents. Mom, just a formality, but the bank needs your signature on this to allow me to handle your bills while you're in here. It was a limited power of attorney. I remember the nurse, a wonderful woman named Brenda, with a kind face and no-nonsense eyes, giving Jessica a long, hard look as I signed it. At the time, I thought she was just being protective of her patient. Looking back, I think Brenda saw something I was too blind and too trusting to see. I asked her one afternoon to bring me the photo album from my 25th anniversary party. My friends had put it together, and I wanted to look at familiar, smiling faces. I wanted to see Frank. "Oh gosh, Mom," she'd said, avoiding my eyes as she fiddled with my water pitcher. "You know, with all the cleaning and organizing I've been doing, I must have packed it away in a box somewhere. The house is a bit of a mess with all my projects. I'll find it when you get home." A tiny alarm bell, no louder than a pin dropping on a carpeted floor, went off in my head. I knew exactly where that album was. It sat on the bottom shelf of the living room bookcase, right next to my collection of Agatha Christie novels. You couldn't miss it. It was 2 feet wide and covered in blue velvet. Packing it away made no sense, but I was tired and arguing took energy I didn't have. "All right, honey," I'd murmured and let it go. And just when she thought I was too weak and drugged up to notice, she forgot who she was dealing with. Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out. The real confirmation came from an unlikely source, my next-door neighbor, Mrs. Gable. We'd lived next to each other for 30 years, a relationship built on borrowed cups of sugar and shared gossip over the backyard fence. Her grandson, a tech-savvy teenager named Leo, had set her up on Facebook a few years back. She was a prolific poster, documenting every bake sale, every prize-winning rose, and every neighborhood event with grainy cell phone pictures. One Tuesday, when the physical therapist had me doing leg lifts that felt like torture, Brenda, the nurse, came in holding her phone. "Eleanor," she said, her brow furrowed, "I don't want to alarm you, but you know my cousin lives a few blocks from you? She just sent me this. Is this your house?" She showed me her screen. It was a Facebook post from a local estate sale and moving company. The picture was unmistakable. It was my front porch with my weathered wicker chairs and the hanging petunias I was so proud of. The post read, "Huge estate sale. Everything must go. Friday to Sunday, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. Antiques, collectibles, sterling silver, vintage jewelry, full household. A lifetime of treasures." The address was mine. The blood drained from my face. I could hear the steady beeping of my heart monitor quicken its pace. My breath hitched. Everything? Sterling silver? That was my grandmother's set, the one I'd planned to give Jessica on her wedding day, if that day ever came. Vintage jewelry? That was Frank's wedding gift to me. A lifetime of treasures. My lifetime. Being sold off like secondhand junk on a folding table on my front lawn? Mom, what is it? Are you okay?" It was Jessica's voice. She'd just walked in, holding a smoothie she probably bought with my money. She must have seen the look on my face, the phone in Brenda's hand. Her chipper smile faltered. I held up a shaking hand, my eyes locked on hers. Brenda quietly excused herself, leaving the phone on my lap. "There's an estate sale. At my house, Jessica. What is going on?" The mask of the devoted daughter shattered. For a split second, I saw raw panic in her eyes, followed by something harder, colder. Resignation. Annoyance. She'd been caught. She straightened up, crossing her arms over her chest, a gesture of defiance I'd known since she was a teenager. "Mom, let's be realistic," she said, her voice taking on a condescending, patronizing tone. "You had a massive heart attack. The doctors said you were lucky to survive the surgery. They said the recovery would be long, that you might need long-term care." She said the words long-term care like a curse, like she was describing a death sentence. To her, it was. A sentence that would require her time, her effort, her money. "They have amazing rehab facilities these days," she continued, steamrolling over my stunned silence. "But they're expensive. The house is old, it needs a new roof, the property taxes are ridiculous. I'm just being practical. Liquidating the assets now makes the most sense. It's for your own good, to pay for your care." My care. She was selling my life, my memories, my home, out from under me to pay for my care, in some beige facility she'd already picked out, I was sure. All under the assumption that I would never be strong enough or sharp enough to come back and stop her. The daughter who cried at my bedside, who held my hand and told me she couldn't live without me, had been simultaneously dismantling my entire existence. The betrayal was so absolute, so profound. It was almost sublime. It didn't just break my heart, it cauterized it. In that moment, lying in that sterile bed, I felt the last vestiges of my grief and shock burn away, leaving behind something clean and hard as steel. Resolve. She thought I was a fragile old woman, a problem to be managed. She had forgotten who I was. I wasn't just Eleanor Vance, the retired widow. For 40 years, I was a high school librarian. Not just any librarian. I was the one who managed the budgets, fought for funding, and digitized the entire county archive system in my spare time. My brain wasn't built on emotion. It was built on the Dewey Decimal System. It was a machine of cross-reference and meticulous documentation. Every lie Jessica had told me, every strange question, every missing object, it was all being cataloged, filed away, and cross-referenced in my mind. The plan didn't have all its details yet, but the spine of it, the central thesis, formed right there. "Oh, honey," I thought, as she launched into a detailed explanation of her financial strategy, "you have no idea what you've just started." I looked at my daughter, her face a carefully constructed mask of concern that was slipping badly at the edges, and I did the very last thing she expected me to do. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I didn't clutch my chest and give her the satisfaction of seeing my heart monitor go haywire. Instead, I took a slow, deliberate breath, closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them, I smiled. It was a small, weak, tired smile, the kind of smile she was used to seeing on my face for the past 3 weeks, the smile of a sick woman. "Oh, honey," I said, my voice soft and raspy, "I'm so sorry. I didn't realize. Of course, you're right. I'm not thinking clearly. It's the medication, I suppose." I patted the top of her hand, the one that wasn't holding the now-forgotten smoothie. "You've always been the practical one. My head is in the clouds, full of sentiment. Thank you for taking care of everything. You're a good daughter." The change in her was immediate. The hard defiance in her stance melted away, replaced by a wave of visible relief. She'd been ready for a fight, for hysterics, for a battle of wills. She was not prepared for surrender. She smiled back, a genuine smile this time, dripping with condescension. "Of course, Mom," she said, her voice soft as speaking to a child. "I knew you'd understand once you'd thought about it. I have everything under control. I've even found a wonderful facility for you, just a few towns over. It's got a garden." A garden. How nice. I imagined a sad little patch of dirt with a few wilting petunias, a place where inconvenient old mothers were sent to quietly fade away. That sounds lovely, I managed to say. Now, I think I'm a bit tired. The physical therapist really took it out of me today. Could you let me rest? Sure, Mom. I'll be back tomorrow to check on you. She leaned down, kissed my forehead, a dry, papery kiss that felt like a contract being sealed, and walked out of the room, her step lighter than I'd heard it in weeks. The moment the door clicked shut, my smile vanished, a cold fury, a rage so pure and focused it felt less like a hot flash and more like a glacier carving its way through my veins, settled deep in my chest. She wasn't just selling my things, she was erasing me. She had me diagnosed, institutionalized, and my estate liquidated before I'd even managed to walk a full lap around the nurse's station. Brenda poked her head in a few minutes later. "You okay, Eleanor? Your pressure dipped a bit there." I looked at her and my resolve hardened. I needed help. Brenda had been a godsend, an angel in orthopedic shoes. But I hesitated. It was a lot to ask of a near stranger. But when I saw the genuine concern in her eyes, a concern my own daughter couldn't even be bothered to fake anymore, I took the leap. "Brenda," I said, my voice low, "can you shut the door? And can I trust you? Completely?" She looked surprised, then she nodded slowly, her expression serious. She closed the door, the soft click echoing in the silent room. She pulled a chair close to my bed. "My own mother was taken for a ride by my brother 10 years ago," she said. "He convinced her she had dementia and had her sign the house over to him. We fought it, and we won. So yes, Eleanor, I think you can trust me." I felt tears well up for the first time, not tears of grief, but of gratitude. I told her everything. The questions, the missing album, the limited power of attorney I so foolishly signed, and the estate sale. I told her about Jessica's cold, practical explanation. Brenda listened without interrupting, her expression growing sterner with every word.
When I finished, she sat back. "The woman has the morals of an alley cat," she said, shaking her head. "All right, Eleanor, what's the first move? The estate sale is this Friday. That's 3 days from now." "The first move," I said, feeling the librarian in me take over, "is information, reconnaissance. I need to know exactly what's happening. Then, I need to call my lawyer." This is where the plan started to take shape, not as some grand cinematic revenge fantasy, but as a series of methodical, logical steps. First, Brenda got me a burner phone, a simple prepaid flip phone she bought for cash at a 7-Eleven. My number, my account, was tied to a family plan that Jessica controlled. I couldn't risk her seeing my call log. My first call was to my neighbor, Mrs. Gable. She picked up on the second ring. "Eleanor, my goodness, I've been so worried. Jessica said that you were, well, she said you were very out of it and couldn't take calls." "Mildred, I am perfectly lucid, just very, very angry," I said. "Listen, I need a favor, and it's a big one. I need you to go to that estate sale at my house on Friday." "Oh dear, I saw the signs. I thought it was so strange." "It is strange. I want you to go, but not as a buyer. I want you to be my eyes and ears. Take your phone. Take pictures of everything, every room, every price tag if you can. And Mildred, try to find a teenage boy. Tell him I'll pay him $50 to make a complete video walkthrough of the whole house, inside and out." I knew there'd be bored teenagers dragged along by their parents. $50 to an 18-year-old is a king's ransom. Mildred, bless her heart, understood immediately. "Say no more, Eleanor. Consider it done. We'll get the little snake." The next part of the information gathering was online. This is where Mildred's grandson, Leo, came in. Brenda got his number from Mildred, and I called him on my little burner phone. He was a sweet kid, the kind who spent too much time on his computer, but was brilliant at it. "Leo, it's your neighbor, Mrs. Vance. I have a project for you, and I can pay you $200 for a couple of hours of your time." His voice perked up instantly. "I need you to become an expert on my daughter, Jessica Vance. Find her social media, all of it. I need to see what she's been posting. I need to know if she's tried to sell anything online already. Facebook Marketplace, eBay, Craigslist. I want a complete digital dossier. And Leo, discretion is essential." I heard the rapid click of a keyboard on his end. "Mrs. Lance," he said, a new seriousness in his voice. "I'm on it." I was building my army, a grandmother, a nurse, and a teenage hacker. It wasn't exactly the A-team, but they were loyal. And right now, loyalty was a currency more valuable than gold. Jessica had the keys, the power of attorney, and possession of my house. She thought she had all the cards, but she overlooked the one ace I had tucked up my sleeve. My second call was harder. It was to Arthur Albright, my husband's estate lawyer and an old family friend. He was semi-retired, a dusty, wonderful old man who smelled of pipe tobacco and peppermint. "Eleanor Vance?" "Eleanor, my dear girl, how are you? I heard about your surgery. I've been meaning to send flowers." "Hold the flowers, Arthur. I have a feeling I'm going to need to pay for legal fees instead," I said wryly. I laid it all out for him, my voice flat and factual. He listened, punctuated only by the occasional, "Good heavens," or "The gall of that woman." When I got to the part about the limited power of attorney, he stopped me. "Eleanor, do you have a copy of it?" "No," I said, my heart sinking. "I signed it here. Jessica took the paperwork." "Don't you worry about that," he said, his voice turning from friendly to formidable. "You authorized her to pay your existing bills, things like the mortgage, the utilities. Liquidating your personal property and real estate for the purpose of moving you into a care facility you haven't agreed to is a massive overstep, a fraudulent one. It's elder abuse, plain and simple." Hearing those words, elder abuse, lit another fire in me. This wasn't just a family squabble. This was a crime. So what do we do? Do we send her a cease and desist? Call the police and stop the sale? Arthur was quiet for a long moment. I could almost hear the legal gears turning in his wise old head. "No," he said finally, and there was a touch of cunning in his voice that I had always appreciated. "No, we don't stop the sale. Not yet."
"But Arthur, she's selling everything." "Eleanor, how much do you think everything in your house is worth? The furniture, the silver, your mother's china?" I did a quick mental calculation. "I don't know, $60,000, maybe $70,000 if she gets good prices." "Exactly," he said. "A tidy sum. Now tell me, did your Frank ever finish cataloging his project in the basement?" A slow, genuine smile spread across my face. Oh, Frank's project. My darling, eccentric, wonderful husband had been a machinist before he retired, but his passion was collecting antique woodworking tools. For 30 years, he'd amassed a collection of rare 18th and 19th century hand planes, saws, and chisels. Stanley, Miller's patent, Norris, names that meant nothing to most people, but were pure gold to collectors.
To an uninformed eye, like Jessica's, it was a basement full of dusty, greasy junk. She hated going down there, called it his troll grotto. Frank had spent the last 5 years of his life meticulously cataloging them, cross-referencing auction prices, and writing down their provenance. The final appraisal, which he'd completed a month before he passed, had put the collection's value at just over $500,000. He'd left the collection, and the detailed binder with the official appraisal, to me in his will. A will that Arthur Albright had written and notarized. A will that I had never told Jessica the full details of. "He finished the catalog, Arthur," I said, my voice suddenly very calm. "It's in a fireproof safe, and the key to that safe is on a chain around my neck." "And the collection itself?" "Down in the troll grotto, just waiting for a new owner." "Perfect," Arthur purred. "Then we let the estate sale proceed. Let her sell every last teacup and throw pillow. We'll get a full list from your neighbor. Then, after she's made a complete fool of herself, we move. Your daughter is not just committing a crime, Eleanor. She's about to commit a spectacular and very, very public financial blunder." The trap was being set. All I had to do now was lie here, do my breathing exercises, and let my dear, practical daughter walk right into it. The thought was more restorative than any medicine they could drip into my veins. Lying in that beige hospital room after the call with Arthur, I felt a sense of calm I hadn't known in years, not even before the surgery. It was the calm of a chess player who sees the entire board and knows, with absolute certainty, that checkmate is only 5 moves away. My role for now was to be a pawn, a weak, helpless, entirely predictable pawn. It was a role I found I could play with surprising ease. The next 2 days were a masterclass in deception. When Jessica visited, I'd listen with a placid, slightly vacant expression as she prattled on about the estate sale company, a group called Timeless Treasures, and how professional they were. She explained how they took a 30% commission, but it was worth it for the convenience. "They do everything, Mom," she'd said, examining her manicure. "Tagging, organizing, they even haul away the leftovers. It's a turnkey operation. You wouldn't have to lift a finger." "That's wonderful, dear," I'd murmur, offering her a weak smile. "You think of everything." Inside, I was mentally underlining the name of the company, Timeless Treasures. Arthur would have fun with them. On Thursday afternoon, the day before the sale, Leo, my teenage hacker, delivered his report. He didn't call. Instead, Brenda brought in a plain manila envelope that had been dropped off at the front desk for her. Inside was a flash drive and a few printed pages. "He said to tell you the target digital footprint is significant," Brenda reported, her lips twitching with amusement. I spent the next hour poring over the pages. It was all there. Jessica's public-facing Facebook page was a predictable pity party. Posts about her poorly mother, the crushing responsibility of being an only child, and vague hashtags like caregiver life and doing my best. She was crafting a narrative of the put-upon, saintly daughter for her circle of equally dramatic friends. They ate it up, flooding her comments with, "You are so strong," and "praying for you and your mom." It made my stomach turn. But the real gold was on the other pages. Leo had found her private Instagram, her Pinterest boards, and even her account on a high-end travel blog. While she was publicly lamenting her burdens, she was privately planning her escape. She'd pinned luxury apartments in Scottsdale, bookmarked all-inclusive resorts in Cabo San Lucas, and followed influencers who specialized in living your best unencumbered life. One post, from just 2 nights before, was a screenshot of a ridiculously expensive designer handbag with the caption, "Soon, baby, soon." She was spending my money before she'd even finished stealing it. The flash drive contained screenshots of her deleted search history, which Leo had somehow managed to recover. How much to furnish a 2-bedroom condo? how to transfer property deeds, average cost of nursing homes in Arizona. The last one made my blood run cold. She wasn't even planning on keeping me in the state. She was going to ship me off to the desert, thousands of miles from everyone I knew, and start her new life funded by my old one. I handed the printouts to Brenda. She read them, her face growing darker with each page. "Well," she said, folding the papers with crisp, angry motions, "she's not just an alley cat. She's a viper." "I can't keep those safe for me, will you?" I asked. "They are Exhibit A." Friday morning, the day of the sale, was torture. I lay in bed, staring at the clock, imagining the doors to my life being thrown open, strangers walking through my home, their hands on Frank's favorite armchair, judging my wedding china, haggling over the price of the lamp I read to Jessica by when she was a little girl. Every tick of the second hand was a tiny chipping away at my history. The first text from Mildred came on 9:15 a.m. on the burner phone. "Place is mobbed, Eleanor. Line was down the block. That company certainly knows how to advertise." A picture followed. My front lawn, teeming with people. Folding tables were covered in my tablecloths, my silverware, my knickknacks. A man was walking away with my set of antique gardening gnomes. I had always hated those gnomes. Frank had won them at a carnival. Still, seeing one tucked under a stranger's arm was a fresh violation. I know this part is hard to hear, but it was important. The truth of her greed had to be laid bare for everyone to see, and this was the stage. It was all about to come out, and believe me, it was going to be glorious. Throughout the day, Mildred was my lifeline. She sent pictures of the price tags. My grandmother's sterling silver flatware, which I'd had appraised for $12,000 years ago, was marked Silver Plate, Best Offer. A signed first edition of To Kill a Mockingbird that Frank had bought me for my 40th birthday was in a box of paperbacks marked $1 each. My heart ached for the treasures she was practically giving away out of sheer ignorance. But the ache was overshadowed by the icy resolve. Every dollar she lost was another nail in her coffin. Around noon, Mildred sent the video. It was from the boy she'd hired. The quality was shaky, but it was a comprehensive tour of the carnage. Room by room, he walked through my home. Empty spaces on the walls where pictures used to hang, my closets fan-sacked, my clothes on portable racks. My jewelry box, the one Frank made me in his workshop, was empty, its velvet linings stark and bare. Then he went to the basement. He switched on the phone's flashlight, illuminating the steep wooden stairs. "Kinda spooky down here," he muttered to himself. The camera panned across the room. There they were, Frank's tools. Dozens of them, beautifully organized on pegboards he had built. Dark, rich rosewood handles, gleaming brass fittings, the deep gray of hand-forged steel. The estate sale company, Timeless Treasures, had clearly shared Jessica's opinion of the troll grotto. They hadn't touched anything. They'd simply hung a single, handwritten sign on a piece of string from the ceiling beam. Mildred, who was narrating from behind the camera, zoomed in on the sign. I held my breath. In loopy cursive, it read, "Lot of old handyman tools, dusty but functional. Take all for $300. $300 for a collection worth more than the house it was in. I almost laughed out loud. It was more perfect than I could have ever planned. Jessica's greed was only exceeded by her monumental, world-class ignorance. She was standing in a gold mine and decided to sell the shovel for $1.
Late that afternoon, Jessica showed up, flush with victory. She was holding a thick wad of cash held together by a rubber band. First day was a huge success, she announced, dropping into the visitor's chair with a weary but satisfied sigh. People are so cheap, you wouldn't believe it. Trying to haggle me down on a $20 lamp. But we cleared almost $8,000 today. Cash. She fanned the bills out like a poker player with a winning hand. That's a lot of money, dear, I said, my voice carefully neutral. Did anything from the basement sell? She waved a dismissive hand. Oh, that junk? Nah. A few guys looked at it, but nobody wanted the whole lot. Some guy offered me $150 for it all. Can you believe the nerve? She scoffed. Don't worry. The company said they'll clear out whatever is left tomorrow and take it to the dump for us. A free service. Free. She was going to pay a commission to a company to throw $500,000 in the garbage. The sheer, breathtaking stupidity of it was a thing of beauty. I felt a surge of adrenaline, the kind I used to get when I'd finally tracked down a rare, out-of-print book for a student. It was the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of knowledge applied correctly. Well, you've worked so hard. You must be exhausted, I said, sinking back into my pillows, playing the part of the fading matriarch to the hilt. You're doing a great job, honey, taking care of all these practical things. Thanks, Mom, she said, beaming, convinced of her own brilliance. I knew you'd see it my way. As soon as she was gone, I made 2 calls on the burner phone. The first was to Arthur. I told him about the $300 sign. There was a long, delighted silence on the other end of the line, followed by a low chuckle. Oh, Eleanor, this is better than I'd hoped. Is the sale running through Sunday? Yes, I replied. Excellent. Then we have some time to arrange a proper buyer. Leave it with me. My second call was to a number I hadn't dialed in over 15 years, but one I had never forgotten. It was for a man named Martin Webb. Martin was what you'd call a specialist. He had been the president of the largest antique tool collectors association in North America, a man that Frank had corresponded with for years, but had only met once. More importantly, he owned a specialty auction house in New York City that dealt exclusively in rare tools and scientific instruments. Frank used to call him the King of Provenance. When he answered, his voice was just as gruff as I remembered. Webb here. Martin, you might not remember me, but this is Eleanor Vance, Frank Vance's wife. The gruffness vanished instantly. Eleanor! Of course I remember. My deepest condolences on Frank's passing. He was a true connoisseur, one of the greats. How can I help you? I took a deep breath. Martin, I have a business proposition for you. How would you like to acquire the complete Frank Vance collection for the absurdly low price of $300? There was a stunned silence. Is this a joke? He finally asked. Not at all, I said, and proceeded to tell him the entire sordid story. I told him about the estate sale, the sign, the name of the company, and the address. I told him he had until Sunday afternoon to get to my house and purchase a lot of old handyman tools. His reaction was exactly what I had hoped for. A mixture of collector's glee and righteous indignation. That woman, he sputtered, is not just a fool, she's a criminal against craftsmanship. She's selling Stradivarius violins for firewood. Eleanor, I'll be on the first flight tomorrow morning. I'll be there with cash. They won't know what hit them. The board was set. The pieces were moving, and the queen, who everyone thought was out of the game, was about to make her move from a hospital bed in a beige room 3 towns away. That Saturday was one of the longest days of my life. I felt like a general waiting for battlefield reports from a war being waged miles away. Every beep of the heart monitor, every squeak of a nurse's shoes in the hallway made me jump. Jessica thankfully didn't visit. She sent a text to my real phone, which I'd had Brenda power on just for show, saying she was swamped at the house and would see me Sunday. Perfect. My reports came from a news source. Martin Webb, the auctioneer, was as good as his word. He texted my burner phone a little after 10 a.m. Landed. On my way. This is going to be biblical. WM.
I couldn't help but smile. He was exactly the kind of ally I needed right now, a man with a flair for the dramatic and a deep personal stake in the outcome. For him, rescuing Frank's collection was both a business coup and a moral crusade. I spent the morning with my physical therapist, dutifully lifting my legs and squeezing stress balls. On the outside, I was a model patient, nodding and complying. On the inside, my mind was a whirlwind of logistics and timing. My discharge from the hospital was scheduled for the following Tuesday. Arthur had been adamant that I shouldn't try to leave any earlier. It would tip Jessica off. Everything had to appear to be proceeding according to her plan right up until the last possible second. At 1:47 p.m., the burner phone buzzed. It was another text from Martin. This one was a picture. It showed a slightly blurry but legally binding receipt from Timeless Treasures estate sales. Written in a hasty scrawl were the words, "One lot MIC basement tools." Below it, the price, $300. And at the bottom, marked in the box, was paid in cash. A second text followed immediately. "The eagle has landed. I have the collection." The incompetence of these people is breathtaking. They didn't even ask for ID. Hired a local moving crew and we're loading out as we speak. We'll have everything secured in a climate-controlled storage unit by 5 p.m. Frank is resting easy tonight, Eleanor, and so should you. M.W. I stared at the phone, a wave of profound relief washing over me. It was done. The most important part of my plan, the part that preserved Frank's legacy, was complete. Whatever happened now with the rest of the house, the rest of my belongings, it was just stuff. But Frank's life's passion was safe from his daughter's greedy, ignorant hands. Sunday was the final day of the sale. According to Mildred, it was mostly looky-loos and bargain hunters picking over the dregs. The big-ticket items were gone. The cash had been collected. Jessica, I knew, would be basking in the glow of her success, tallying up her earnings, dreaming of Scottsdale and designer handbags. She was about to get exactly what she deserved, and I had a front row seat. Sunday evening, she breezed into my room, looking exhausted but triumphant. She was holding a large bank deposit envelope. "It's over," she announced, flopping into the chair. "All done. I have never seen so much junk in my life. The house is empty, echoey, but we did it. After the estate company's commission and fees for the dumpster and cleanout, we cleared a grand total of $34,650. She patted the envelope. "It's all going into a new joint account tomorrow, just for your care. Easier to manage that way." A joint account. How thoughtful. An account from which she could bleed me dry while I was tucked away in some sun-bleached memory care facility in Arizona. "You've worked so hard, sweetie," I said, my voice full of fake sympathy. "You must be bone-tired." "I am, but it was worth it. Now the hard part is done, and we can focus on getting you into a nice, comfortable place where you can relax." She stayed for another hour, outlining her plans for my future. She spoke of tiled floors and walk-in showers, of community bingo nights and landscaped gardens. She talked about selling the house itself and about how the real estate market was hot right now and how it was foolish to hold on to such a big, empty money pit. It was like listening to a stranger plan my funeral right in front of me. I just nodded and smiled, the picture of docile senility, counting the minutes until she left. Tuesday morning was discharge day.
Jessica was supposed to pick me up at 11. The hospital had rules. A patient recovering from major heart surgery couldn't just take a taxi. You needed a family member or a registered caregiver to sign you out and take you home. She was planning, she'd told me, to take me directly to see the wonderful facility she'd picked out for me. No point in going back to that sad, empty house, she'd said with a shudder.
At 10 o'clock, Arthur Albright walked into my room. He was dressed not in his usual rumpled tweed, but in a razor-sharp pinstripe suit. He looked 10 years younger and twice as formidable. He was holding a sleek leather briefcase. "Good morning, Eleanor," he said with a broad smile. "Ready to go home?" I was already dressed in the comfortable clothes Brenda had helped me with. More than ready, Arthur. Brenda came in right behind him, pushing a wheelchair. "Doctor's orders, Eleanor, no arguments," she said with a wink. "But what about Jessica?" I asked. "Don't you worry about Jessica," Arthur said, his eyes gleaming. "Jessica is about to have a very, very busy day. Brenda here has generously agreed to be your registered escort." He handed Brenda a signed letter on his official letterhead. "Everything is in order." The journey from the hospital room to Arthur's sedan in the parking lot felt like a prison break. I half expected Jessica to pop out from behind a potted plant, but we made it. As we drove away from the beige building that had been my home and my war room, I felt the sun on my face and took my first deep breath of free, non-recirculated air. "First stop, the bank?" I asked. "First stop, the bank," Arthur confirmed. "And after that, a little visit to the police department." We walked into my local branch of the bank, where I had been a customer for 40 years. Arthur had called ahead. The branch manager, a kind man named Mr. Henderson, whom I'd known since he was a teller, met us at the door and ushered us into his glass-walled office. Arthur did all the talking. He laid out the situation calmly and professionally. He had a copy of the limited power of attorney I had signed. He highlighted the specific clauses which strictly limited Jessica's authority to paying routine and pre-existing household bills from my checking account. He then produced the advertisement for the estate sale and a notarized statement from Mildred Gable detailing what she had witnessed. Mr. Henderson grew visibly pale. Ms. Vance's daughter was just here yesterday. She opened a new joint account with a cash deposit of over $34,000. And she attempted to get herself added to her mother's safety deposit box, I presume? Asked Arthur, not missing a beat. "Yes! How did you—" "We told her she couldn't without her mother being present. She was very insistent." Inside that box, I knew, was my original copy of Frank's will and the multi-page certified appraisal for his tool collection, the one thing that could blow her entire scheme sky high. She'd been trying to get her hands on it to destroy it. "Mr. Henderson," Arthur said, leaning forward, "my client, Mrs. Vance, is here to revoke that power of attorney, effective immediately. She is also here to report fraudulent activity on her estate. We are freezing the new joint account, and we are putting a security alert on all of Mrs. Vance's existing accounts. Nothing, and I mean nothing, gets withdrawn, transferred, or paid without her express verbal confirmation with you personally." Mr. Henderson couldn't have agreed faster. Within 15 minutes, forms were signed, passwords were changed, and Jessica's financial coup was brought to a screeching, undignified halt. As we left, I saw him on the phone, no doubt putting out an all-points bulletin to every teller in the building. The walls were closing in. Our next stop was the police station. It was a clean, modern building that smelled faintly of disinfectant. We sat down with a detective, a woman in her 40s with tired but intelligent eyes. Her name was Detective Miller. Arthur, once again, took the lead, laying out the case with precision. He had all the evidence neatly organized in his briefcase: Mildred's statement, Leo's digital dossier on Jessica's social media and spending plans, the advertisement for the estate sale, and Martin Webb's sworn affidavit about the tool collection, and a copy of its official appraisal. He presented the case not as a messy family drama, but as a clear-cut case of financial elder abuse and fraud. Detective Miller listened patiently, took notes, and examined the documents. When she got to the part about the tool collection being sold for $300 against a $500,000 appraisal, she let out a low whistle. "Okay," she said, looking straight at me with a newfound respect. "Okay, Mrs. Vance, your daughter has made a series of very poor decisions." She gathered the papers. "We'll be paying Miss Jessica Vance a visit this afternoon. I suggest you go home, change the locks, and do not, under any circumstances, answer the door or your phone if she tries to contact you." Going home was the hardest part. Arthur drove me up the familiar street. As we pulled into my driveway, I saw it. The house looked naked. My porch was bare, the windows had a vacant stare, the lawn was trampled and littered with debris from the sale. A big, ugly dumpster sat at the curb like a monument to my daughter's betrayal. For a moment, the emotional toll of it all hit me, and my carefully constructed composure threatened to crumble. Frank and I had built a life in that house. Jessica had dismantled it in 3 days. Arthur put a hand on my shoulder. "It's just wood and plaster, Eleanor. The memories are in here," he said, tapping his temple. "We can buy new furniture. We can't buy back your dignity. That you saved all on your own." He was right. I took a breath, pushed the grief down, and focused on the final moves of the game. A locksmith Arthur had called was already there, waiting on the porch. Within an hour, every lock on my home had been replaced. The old house was a fortress now, and the dragon was locked out. It was just after 4 p.m. when the burner phone rang. It was an unknown number. I hesitated, then answered. "Hello?" "Mrs. Vance, this is Detective Miller. Just wanted to let you know, we have made contact with your daughter." There was a pause. I could hear commotion in the background. She was surprised to see us. She is currently on her way downtown to answer some questions. Her cell phone has been placed into evidence. My fortress was secure. The enemy was in custody. It was checkmate. The quiet in my empty house was absolute. The first 24 hours in my empty house were the strangest of my life. The silence was a physical presence. Every floorboard creaked with a new, hollow sound, my footsteps echoing in rooms that had been absorbing sounds with carpets, drapes, and furniture for 40 years. I walked from the living room to the dining room, my hand trailing along the bare walls, touching the faint, lighter-colored rectangles where our family photos had hung. This wasn't just a robbery. A burglar takes your things. Jessica had curated my absence. She had systematically and methodically removed every trace of me, every piece of evidence that a life had been lived here. It was a professional job. I had to give her that. The initial shock, the grief I'd been holding at bay, tried to surface. I could have crumpled to the floor and wept, but I didn't. The anger, that cold, hard thing that had been my fuel for the past week, was still there, and it was a surprisingly sturdy support beam. Tears could come later. First, I had work to do. Brenda and Mildred, my glorious co-conspirators, arrived that evening like a cavalry charge, armed with a folding card table, a few lawn chairs, and 3 large pizzas. We sat in the middle of my empty living room floor and ate straight from the boxes. Leo, my hacker, came by later with a laptop and a portable Wi-Fi hotspot, setting me up with a new secure email and showing me how to block unwanted numbers. My little army was making sure the fortress walls held. The call came the next morning. It wasn't from a blocked number. It was from the county detention center. I knew it was her one phone call. My hand trembled as I pressed the accept button on the burner phone. "This is a collect call from an inmate at the Suffolk County Jail. To accept the charges, press 1. I pressed 1. "Mom? Mom, oh my God, Mom, you have to get me out of here." Her voice was a raw shriek of panic and indignation. There was no apology, no remorse, only terror and blame. "They arrested me! They put me in handcuffs, Mom, in front of everyone!"
They said you filed a report? How could you do this to your own daughter? It was all a misunderstanding. I was helping you." I let her spiral, listening to the torrent of excuses and accusations. It was for my own good. She was overwhelmed. The company must have made a mistake. The money was for me. How could I be so cruel, so ungrateful? When she finally paused to take a ragged breath, I spoke. My voice was calm, quiet, and utterly final. "No, Jessica, this wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a plan. Your plan. And you have been caught. There is no us anymore. There is only you and the consequences of your actions. Do not call me again." I hung up before she could respond. I blocked the number from the jail. Then I sat at my little card table, took a shaky breath, and drank a cup of tea Brenda had left for me. The last thread connecting me to the daughter I thought I had was severed. I didn't feel grief. I felt free. The legal battle was, thankfully, short. Jessica was assigned a public defender, a young, overwhelmed woman who, according to Arthur, quickly realized her client was not just guilty, but also profoundly stupid. They were presented with the mountain of evidence, the power of attorney violation, the online ads, Jessica's own social media posts bragging about her future plans, and the crushing centerpiece, the side-by-side comparison of the $300 receipt for MISC tools and the $500,000 certified appraisal.
Arthur described the moment he revealed the appraisal to me later. He said Jessica just stared at it, her face going from defiant to confused to ashen white. The number was incomprehensible to her. It was too big. She started muttering, No, it's just old junk. Dad's old junk." She hadn't been caught stealing a fortune. She had been caught throwing one away. For Jessica, whose entire life was a monument to materialism and shortcuts, that was a greater crime, a deeper humiliation than the theft itself. The fact that her greed had made her a fool was an agony beyond her comprehension. Faced with a public trial where Arthur would have gleefully called Martin Webb, Mildred, Leo, and Brenda to the stand to paint a picture of her as a cruel, calculating, and incompetent monster, she crumbled. She took the deal. She pleaded guilty to 1 count of felony grand larceny and 1 count of financial elder abuse. She was sentenced to 2 years in a low-security state correctional facility, followed by 10 years of strict probation. And the part that made my lips curl into a grim smile, she was ordered to pay restitution. Not just for the $34,650 she had managed to steal, but for the full appraised value of every single item documented in the estate sale video, based on appraisals Arthur was more than happy to provide. The final sum, including the tools she so foolishly sold, came to $582,400. That debt would follow her for the rest of her life. Her wages garnished, her credit ruined. She would never get another loan, another fancy car, another designer handbag. Her dreams of a best unencumbered life had evaporated. With the legalities settled, the rebuilding began. Arthur went after timeless treasures with the fury of a righteous warrior. Faced with a lawsuit for gross negligence, they'd failed to appraise a valuable collection, sold assets without the owner's consent, and operated on the authority of a fraudulent power of attorney. Their insurance company settled almost immediately. They paid out $150,000, more than twice the value of the household goods I had lost. It turned out selling my life had been quite profitable. For me. As for the tool collection, Martin Webb was a man of his word. He organized a special auction in New York, the Frank Vance Collection of Historic Woodworking Instruments. It was a massive success. Collectors from all over the world flew in.
After his commission, the final wire transfer to my new Jessica-free bank account was for an astonishing $612,000. Frank, my dear practical Frank, had left me one last gift. His secret hobby, his troll grotto that I'd always found a bit dusty, turned out to be the greatest safety net I could have ever imagined. Jessica's betrayal, which was meant to bankrupt me, had inadvertently triggered an avalanche of wealth I never knew I had. It took me 6 months to make the house a home again. I didn't try to replicate what I'd lost. That life was over. Instead, I created something new. I had the walls painted a lovely warm yellow. I bought a comfortable new sofa, a big screen TV, and the fluffiest recliner I could find. Mildred helped me find wonderful pieces at antique shops. Not replacements, but new treasures with their own stories. Leo set up a state-of-the-art computer system for me, and I started volunteering for the library again, helping them with their digital archives from home. Brenda and I have a standing dinner date every Thursday. My life, which had been so brutally emptied, was now full. Fuller, in fact, than it had been in years. I don't hate my daughter. Hate is a hot, corrosive emotion, and I'm done with all that. What I feel is a kind of profound clinical pity. She was a hollow person, defined only by what she wanted to acquire. She saw me not as my mother, but as a walking, talking bank account with an expiration date. In her rush to cash me in, she never once bothered to look at the contents, to understand the true value of anything. And for that, she paid the ultimate price. She didn't just lose her inheritance, she lost her mother, her home, her freedom, and her future, all for a handful of cash and a basement full of junk. My house is quiet now, but it's a peaceful quiet. I'm sitting in my brand new armchair in my sunny living room, looking out at the new roses Mildred helped me plant. I am 68 years old, I have a triple bypass scar on my chest, and I am the architect of my own life. I am not a victim. I am the woman who was wronged and who, using her wits and a few good friends, took back everything and then some. It turns out, revenge is a dish best served with a completely new set of china. What would you have done in my place? Let me know your thoughts in the comments.
So, another story of my grandmother has ended. And be clicking here, you will have when more such stories.